Okay, welcome back. So the last time we have created models and we have applied migrations to the database, including the 0001 initial file. And today we are going to create some trips actually. We're going to add records to our database. So let me close the browser and let's quit the server. So Django allows us to access something called shell. It's much like Python interpreter. But shell is only attached to this Django application. It's only relative to this one. And this allows us to directly modify the database without too much effort actually. You need to be inside your project directory, world tour in our case, and you will type python manage.py shell. It looks like a Python interpreter, as I said. And the first thing we need to do now is we need to import the trip class. So from models.py, I will need to import the trip class. Okay, so let's do that. I will say from Europe.models. So from Europe application.models, which is the name of the file, I want to import the trip class. Then what I want to do is I want to create an object or a trip object. So we will call that trip1 will be equal to the trip class. We will need origin, let's say Rome. We will need a destination, which will be Paris, for instance. We'll need the number of nights, let's say 5 nights, and we need a price, 350 euros. Okay, good. So trip1, it's a trip object basically. And if you will type trip1.origin, you'll get Rome, trip1.destination, you'll get Paris, trip1.price, 350, and trip1.nights, you'll get 5. But if you want to print the trip itself, it will only display a trip object. So this is not really helping me by just looking to trip object. And what I need actually is I want a string representation of that record. Just to tell me that the trip from Rome to Paris with 5 nights costs 350 euros. Okay, and we are going to do this we are going to change in models.py. So let's exit this for a moment and let's open models.py. And inside our trip class right here, we will define stir. And I have a video on the stir method versus the wrapper method. You might want to check that out. Self as a parameter. And I want to return a string format telling me that, so this is the way that we are going to format our string, right? So self.id, self.origin to self.destination for self.nights, costs, and self.price. Just be careful, I made a typo here. It's nights with 1 S. Origin, price, destination, and ID. Okay, let's open the terminal. CD world tour, need to be inside your directory, and python manage.py shell. And we will import from Europe.models. We will import the trip. And let's recreate that trip1 again, that trip1 object one more time. Then we want to save the trip object. We want to save that record. So what we will do is we will say trip1.save. And this is very similar to the commit command in SQL. When you write a bunch of lines in SQL, by the end of it, you type commit, which means that I'm okay with the changes and I want to save these changes to the database. This is very similar to that. So if you want to access any of these attributes like origin, destination, and so on, we can do this like before. So origin, which is Rome, trip1.destination, which is Paris, and the same will be for nights and price. But the most important thing is the string representation. So if you just say trip1, you'll get trip with ID number 1, Rome to Paris for 5 nights costs 350 euros, which is a better representation than before, when we only had a query for the object. Okay, now let's talk about rendering templates. So one more feature that we want for the application to do is to not only display text in the shell like we have seen, but to return an HTML template. And what we will need to do is that we will go to views.py, and instead of this statement right here, the return statement for HTTP response and just displaying Europe trips as a header, we want to substitute that by return render, and we want to render the request, and the second argument is the name of the HTML template. So it will be trips /index.html, and I did not create index.html yet, so let's go ahead and do it. So inside Europe application right here, I will create a folder. I will call that folder templates, and inside templates I will create another folder. I will call it trips, and inside trips I will create index.html. And I want just a simple boilerplate for HTML. In the title I will say just trips. In the body I will give it h1 and we'll say Europe trips. Okay, so this should do the same thing. So let's open the terminal. And we will have the same thing, h1 Europe trips with a title here, trips. And what we want to do is to retrieve the trips stored in the database and render them on the web page. This is our ultimate goal. And basically this is done through something called the Django Template Language. So the way that Django passes information into the template is through a context dictionary. So let's go to views, and let's just put this right here, and I will create context variable, which is a dictionary in fact, and any dictionary has a key value pair, as you know. So the keys are the names of the things that we want to plug into the template, and the values are what we want actually to plug in. So let's say that the first key will be called trips, and it has a value of the name of the class, which is trip.objects.all. And this is the same as we were typing in shell, just to display all the trips inside the trip class. So we want to import trip from models.py file. So from current directory models, I want to import trip. Okay. All right, and we are good to go. Just the last modification we will need to do in the index.html, we will need to change that and write some Jinja code. So we'll create unordered list and the % for trip in trips, and you want to close the for loop by saying just again the % or percentage sign and for. Okay, and in between here we'll create another UL, and we want to return each trip, or to print each trip. Just before we try that, don't forget to add the third argument, which is the context. Okay, in your index function in the views.py. Okay, so we have three arguments: the request, we have the index.html, and we have the context, which is the dictionary that should print all the records in our database. All right, let's give that a try. So cd world tour python manage.py, and let's run the server. Okay, cool. Open that. And voila, Europe trips, and the only record stored in our table in the database, which is from Rome to Paris for 5 nights, costs 350 euros with an ID, and it's really neat. Okay, and this is because of the stir function that we have created in our models.py. In the next and final video, I'm going to show you something called the admin tool in Django, and we will see how we can add trips not only using the shell, but using that admin tool. Okay, so thank you very much, and I will see you in the next video.